Today's webinar. My name is Adam Golov, Marketing and Communications Manager at Data Conversion Laboratory, and I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know we will allow time at the end of the webinar for questions and answers, so please write your question in the chat area as they come to mind. If we don't have time to answer them all, we will make them available on our site. For those of you who are not familiar with DCL, we convert and organize content to create electronic documents, populate databases, publish on the web, and basically get it ready for tomorrow's technology. DCL services help you refine your document conversion strategy, identify document redundancy, extract metadata, and transform legacy and future documents for real needs today and in the future. DCL serves a broad client base spanning all industries. And to you, Laura.
Yes, okay. I'm not seeing the invite to take control.
I'm going to make you presenter.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Adam. I'm Laura Dawson. I'm the Product Manager for Identifier Services at Bowker, the U.S. ISBN agency. And I am here to facilitate a discussion with Penny Sansevieri, who is the CEO of Author Marketing Experts, and Sandra Poirios-Smith, the President of Smith Publicity. So welcome, ladies. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting us. Thank you, Laura. Thanks. We're very excited to talk to everyone here.
Great. So Penny, I'd like to start with you and talk about marketing for a little while. Maybe you can address some of the issues around what the trends are now in terms of book marketing, categories that sell best, and of course we've got the abundance problem. We've got tons and tons of content out there. How does an unknown author stand a chance in all of this?
Well, first off, I don't know if there are necessarily categories that sell better than others, because a lot of that trends with what's topical, what's top of mind with the consumer. I do know that this is a really great time to be a fiction author, and I never thought in the 14 years that I've been in business that I would actually say that, because typically fiction has been tough to market.
Mm-hmm.
Nonfiction, obviously, you can anchor it to a bigger news story, that kind of thing, and fiction's always been difficult. But fiction right now is doing really well, and I just got back from Romance Writers of America, end of July, and there's a lot of these authors that are doing really well, and you'd say, well, okay, romance, I get it, it's a popular topic, but it's also really saturated.
Yeah.
So I think to the second question, how does an unknown author stand a chance? I mean, a couple of trends that I see that are emerging, and I know some of them we're gonna chat about.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is own the shelf. So you want to publish a lot, and now that I've just overwhelmed the entire audience, I want to, also say that short is the new long. So we're seeing, and I've talked to some publishers actually who are seeing books that are 20,000 and in some cases 10,000 words that are actually doing as well, if not better, than their longer counterparts. And this isn't just for fiction, by the way, this is also for nonfiction.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that people, first off, you want to own the shelf, because when a reader finds an author that they like, they typically will buy everything from that author, right? So that's the first reason why you want to do it. The other reason is that, and you guys know this, and this is probably at this point somewhat of an outdated statistic, but there are 3,500 books published every day in the U.S., and that doesn't include a lot of the e-books that will be launched just onto Amazon with no ISBN number. So there's no way to track these, right? So we're probably looking more at 4,500 books published every day.
At least. I have heard actually from Amazon and this was just within the context of a presentation, that they publish about 2,000 books a week.
Okay. Well, then, right. So,
yeah.
And that number, then I would assume, is just so the KDP, so with the ASIN numbers
yep.
direct to, okay. So it's a pretty overwhelming number. So ideally, what you want to do is you want to own the shelf. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to publish, a book a month. Although I do know some authors that are doing it. If you think about the word count as 10 or 20,000, that becomes a lot more manageable, right?
Yeah. Well, one thing that digital has done is it's changed our definition of what a book is.
Yeah. Right. Right. Exactly.
It doesn't have to be a particular length,
Right. Right, exactly. It has changed our definition of what a book is. And it's funny is because I have 14 books out. Two of the most recent are the Red Hot Internet Publicity, which is 200 plus pages, and then How to Sell Books by the Truckload, which is 72 pages. And I'm going to tell you, Red Hot Internet Publicity, I worked on that forever, as any author listening to this knows. The blood and sweat that goes into creating a book. It's not that I didn't do the same thing with a 72-page book, but clearly 72 pages takes a lot less time. That book outsells my longer one 15 to 1. So,
wow.
Yeah, and I think, because it's a highly focused topic, so I'm covering one topic in this book, and that's Amazon, whereas Red Hot Internet Publicity covers every, internet, Facebook, whatever, Twitter.
Yeah.
So people also like to just sort of selectively lose themselves into one focused topic when you've got nonfiction. If you've got fiction, a lot of what these authors are doing is they're creating a whole series of books. So the series is a very, very big thing. In other words, characters that you like that go from book to book to book. And in some cases, you may have a town where each of the characters has their own book. So Kristen Higgins, who I was talking to at Romance Writer, she's a best-selling author. She's great. She has such a fun voice in her books. She's doing that actually with a series. She's grabbing the characters in the town, giving them their own, giving them their own book, and these books are doing really, really well. So the series is another really big thing. So the shorter books, publishing more consistently in the series. The biggest fatal mistake, and I'm pretty sure Sandy will agree with me, is when an author comes to us and says, okay, Penny, look, I want to work with you, but I just want to see how this one book does. And then next year, I'll think about whether or not I want to publish something else. It just doesn't make any sense to do that, in my opinion.
Right. And just to absolutely agree with what Penny's saying, this is Sandy here, is at Digital Book World, a big topic at their conference is discoverability and book sales. And one of the speakers was phenomenal and very, very successful author, self-published, and then, getting traditional opportunities. But he said the key to his was putting something out probably every 2 to 3 months, and they were short. And his space was science fiction, and they are voracious readers. And if they like you, they're going to follow you and become your fan. So if he had done one book a year or every 2 years, he would not be successful. But Penny is right on the money. That's exactly was the strategy to success for these authors. Is the shorter, you get your audience, you get your fans, and you keep them, and they will keep buying.
Okay, great. Yeah, Penny, you were saying that that fiction is selling very, very well these days, and so you're marketing a lot of fiction authors now?
We're doing a lot more fiction than I think we were, say, 5 or 6 years ago. We're doing a lot more fiction, and part of that is because ebooks. So there are particular genres that do, I think, better in ebooks, and I'm sure both you and Sandy will know, have also, or can also weigh in on this too, because children's books obviously don't do as well in ebook.
Right.
Business books, it's probably half and half, but I know genre fiction, mystery, romance, that kind of thing, they tend to do really, really, really well in ebook. In fact, most of our authors they'll sort of experience the same numbers that I am with the Amazon book, as they'll do 15, they'll be selling 15 ebooks for every one print book that they sell. And in some cases, they don't sell any print books. They're just selling ebooks.
Right.
So go ahead.
You're talking about genre fiction, but literary fiction, I would imagine, is still a little bit tougher because there's not always an obvious hook that you can, attach to an issue or a group of people.
Well, that's very true. Now, literary fiction, I mean, we still see literary fiction, again, because of the ebook component, I think doing really well. And one of the other things that we sort of play with, too, is the pricing. So I always encourage our authors, especially if you have a series of books, at least 3 of them, that you always have something free. And most of our authors will sort of rotate that. So they'll have something free and we'll promote it. But each of the books has to promote the other books. That's the thing. That you can't have a single title for free with no back matter that leads people to either to you or to your other titles.
Got it. So let's talk about algorithms at Amazon. And the word that is nearest and dearest to my heart, metadata.
Right.
How do you recommend that authors harness metadata, figure out what keywords to use, etc.?
Well, it's funny. Metadata is sort of the new buzzword, right? A few years ago it was platform. Now everybody's kind of right, and now everybody's talking about metadata. And the problem with that is that I think most authors don't really know what when we're referring to Amazon, what metadata is. Now, unless you have access as a publisher to the back end, what I'm talking about specifically with metadata is the keywords that you choose and the categories. Because Amazon ranks, so the Amazon algorithms can be triggered by reviews, which I'll talk about in a second, the categories and the keywords. And ideally with the categories, when it comes to the algorithms, when it comes to the Amazon algorithms of the categories, you want to find something that's very narrow. You want to find a category that isn't a big, like, I want to be the best-selling author in social media. That's probably never going to happen because there are people like Guy Kawasaki and Chris Brogan who are out there writing massively awesome books. And you know what I mean? And so it can be really hard to compete in some major category like that. So I suggest that they first off that authors look at picking subcategories. In other words, some sort of subset of a major. You're allowed to have 2 major categories in Amazon, so you want to pick a narrow niche category that is underneath that. Now for fiction authors, Amazon has rolled out something new over the last probably 6 weeks. They rolled out Amazon themes. Now, I talked to Amazon. They are going to be rolling this out across the board. They're going to be rolling this out to nonfiction authors as well. If you have access to your Amazon Author Central page, you can go into the back end of that page and you can find a list of the themes for your particular book. But you can also go onto Amazon and look. So if you hop onto Amazon.com right now and you go to just pick any genre fiction that you want, you will see down the left-hand side the themes. So most of it is place and character. And what you do with these themes is you take one of each and you include that in the keywords in the back end of Amazon because that will help you to rank. And what Amazon has told me, because I asked them sort of why they did this, and why they did this is because users actually do search on, I want romance novels with cowboys in them, or something like that. Right, or firemen, or billionaires, or SEAL team, or whatever. They actually readers do search that way. So include that in your back end because it will help you to come up higher in the searches.
Cool.
And you can have easy ways to find keywords. I would suggest ubersuggest.org. Ubersuggest is a great site which actually spiders or scrapes Google every day for searches. And what you'll see on Ubersuggest if you pop in a particular keyword, like let's say, thriller, you'll see what people are searching for under the single keyword of thriller, and that will help you because most people are not going to Amazon and saying, I want to read a romance novel, so I'm just going to pop in the word romance into the search bar. Most people are searching, you both know this too, most people are searching based on whatever parameters, so, romance novels with cowboys or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, time travel romance, yeah.
Time travel romance, right. We think of Outlander, which I'm sure we're going to start seeing a lot of that kind of past life stuff now. So,
right.
And Amazon, just speaking of which, Amazon does update these themes and their categories depending on, you know, best-selling books. So I would assume that 10 years ago, Amazon probably did not have an erotic romance category, which we do now.
Right.
I would expect that they're going to start expanding. They have a very somewhat narrow, I find, paranormal category, but I think they're probably going to be expanding that as well to sort of accommodate whatever flood of past life books that we're going to see hit the market.
Right, right, cool. Okay, well, what about, you know, of course the end goal in all of this is reaching your readers. How does reader buzz make a difference with book sales, and is it possible to over-rely on, you know, some of the bigger book bloggers like Dear Author or Smart Bitches Trashy Books to spread the word about your book?
Well, I think that, you know, back to what we talked about at the beginning of this call, the numbers of books released are really staggering. So
exactly.
These book bloggers are awesome, but they're also pretty busy. So we did an experiment in early June, and I'm just looking back at the calendar, just so in early June, and what we did is we did a freebie with a book, and we were testing with this book. So it's a contemporary romance novel, and we did a freebie launch for 2 days to sort of see what would happen. Now, we promoted the freebie launch, but we have intentionally not been promoting the book because I wanted to see what kind of buzz it could create on its own. So the book got 61,000 downloads, and within 2 days the author had 200 letters from readers, and the reviews went from 20 to 196 inside of a month. Now the way that we did that was by including a letter in the back of the book for readers. So, and I didn't sort of come by this idea naturally because I was at a seminar where Patrick Brown and Goodreads was talking about how they did a survey, and they found that the #1 thing that authors want, the readers want at the end of the book, is to connect with the author.
Oh.
And if you look at most books, most of them have sort of a little bit of, oh, she lives with her Sheltie in blah, blah, whatever, and then her website address. But there's nothing that incentivizes the reader to say, hey, I'd love to hear from you. So we did that. We put this letter in the back of the book, and we said, look, thank you so much for reading, and we'd really love to hear from you. Let us know what you thought of the book. And if you have time, would love a review. And that's how we took it from 20 to 196.
Wow.
Within that short period of time. So I love bloggers. I love our bloggers. We work with them all the time, but I think reader engagement is sorely overlooked. So I think authors really need to be, and the book continues to sell. I mean, even after the freebie promotion, the book continues to do really well.
Excellent.
So, you know, engaging readers and getting them to, because they are, you know, these are your super fans or your street team or whatever you want to call them. These are your best allies to, you know, share this book with 10 of your friends or, you know, whatever, to get more people to know about your book.
Right, right, right. Cool. And that's, I mean, of course, the ultimate goal is for the readers to be as passionate as possible about your work. So the more you can encourage that and make it easy for them, the better.
Well, and that's what we've seen, right? That's what we've seen with books that have done really well with surprisingly minimal promotion. A lot of it has come through the reader buzz, that readers, you know, readers telling other readers.
Right.
And that's where I think authors really need to harness it. And some of the folks that, some of these women at Romance Writers were really, they were fully getting that. I mean, they were completely on board with, you know, you've got to make your reader your, you know, your little street team out there helping you to promote the book and feeling like they are, you know, doing something really great helping out the author, because they are.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So how early is too early? It's obvious you don't want to send out a lot of marketing messaging, you know, when you've got 6 months left before your book is finished.
Well, you know what, and I'll tell you something, and I think Sandy will probably agree, is pitching windows have really changed.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be, when we were first in business, I mean, there used to be, okay, there was a hard and fast, here's when you do this, here's when you do that, but everything has kind of sort of slid around a little bit. I mean, some of the publications, like Publishers Weekly and whatnot, they still have that kind of a window.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I found for those authors who are on the call thinking, gosh, my book's been out for a year and it's not really done anything, and what can I do? For as long as your book is an evergreen, so as long as your book is still topical, while it may be harder to get bloggers interested in an older book, it's probably not that difficult to get readers interested. So you can still get out there and, incentivize readers. And in some cases, we have some authors who have launched a book, didn't launch the ebook, and I'll tell them, look, launch the ebook and let's work with the electronic copy, which is newer, and has a newer date attached to it, and get that out there. But yes, sometimes it's too early. I mean, I know Amazon's doing, pre-sales and whatnot. I'm not a huge fan of pre-sales because I don't know, unless you're a major, mega, best-selling author to start with, that pre-sales are necessarily going to benefit you. But it is certainly good. So don't bank on pre-sales, but it is certainly good to get the book up there, especially if you're starting some kind of early pitches to bloggers. When we've worked with some of the longer lead bloggers, we've typically had to schedule some of our work 2 months in advance in order to get on their schedule. Just to get, because they get a lot of requests and they get a lot, they have a lot going on. So 2 to 3 months is usually our window.
Cool. Great. So in terms of social media, which is now, I mean, I remember back in the day having to teach publishers about social media, and they were not very enthusiastic about it at first. But these days, what types of social media do you find to be the most effective?
Well, I think that and one of the things I said to you, and I know this on the slide, is it's not about being everywhere, it's about being everywhere that matters. I mean, I think that you really have to figure out what where your audience is. I mean, it's hard to just sort of make a blanket statement and say to every single author, here's where you need to be. I can tell you Goodreads is probably a really good site for almost every author, unless you have something that's super niche. Like we've had some authors who work exclusively with, this book is for, all HR experts or something like that. Goodreads is probably not going to benefit you.
Right.
One thing that we've seen, too, is images are really, really important. We're having a lot of fun right now with Google+, because it seems to be, while Facebook has been pretty squirrely since December of last year, Google+ has been really great for us as far as, momentum and getting people to notice authors and their books and things like that. So it's been a great resource. The one thing that I will say, though, is that social media is going to be paid at some point in the not-too-distant future. Facebook has already gone that way. I think Twitter may go that way. It's a little bit harder because Twitter tends to be much more of a news feed.
Yeah, although the promoted tweets are paid.
Yeah, exactly. So I would really encourage everybody. It's great to be. So find the social networking site that you feel that your audience is really on and embracing, that your readers on and embracing, but make sure that you have a newsletter, because a newsletter will save you when all of these sites go paid, because most of us don't have big social media advertising marketing budgets.
Right, and having a newsletter means that you're gathering the contact information of your fans, which is incredibly valuable.
That's incredibly valuable. You really do want to build that. And, a lot of times people say, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to release in the newsletter? And I think that you really want to, again, go back to the super fans, go back to the street team stuff. You want to communicate with your fans, let them know what's going on for you. Open the kimono a little bit. Talk about what's happening in your world. I mean, make it interesting and short, and because not everybody wants you to go on elaborately about your dog or whatever. But talk about the releases, talk about some of the things, and just kind of briefly update them. many authors will subscribe, or many readers will subscribe to authors' blog posts, which is also great. You do have to incentivize them to sign up. It's not enough just to be fabulously wonderful to get them to sign up for the newsletter. So think about what that ethical bribe is going to be.
Yeah.
Or sort of raise the, to raise the bar. I mean, I think giving away a chapter of your book isn't really, it doesn't cut it as much as I think it used to, because consumers want more in order to give you their email address. But social networking, really important. Newsletter, got to start thinking about it, because at some point it's going to be the best way to reach your readers.
Yep, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between promoting ebooks versus print, because there are very distinct differences in the promotion efforts on each side.
Well, that's a very good point. There are very different things that you can do with ebooks versus print books. And it's not to say that print is not going away. For anybody that says that print is going away, it's not. Thank goodness, because I know a lot of books, and everybody sort of has their preferences, right? So I like reading fiction in ebooks, but for any of the business books and whatever that I read, where I'm dog-earing and I'm highlighting chapters and things like that, I'm usually reading those in print. So everybody sort of has their preferences. But with regards to ebooks, I mean, you can play around with the pricing a little bit more. So you can, what I have heard from the KDP folks is that the sweet spot is $2.99 for ebook pricing, and sometimes I say that to authors, like, oh my God, that's so low, and they sort of gasp.
Yeah.
And you can raise it. You can raise it to as much as you want, but keep in mind that readers are pretty price sensitive, especially when it comes to ebooks. So you can play around with. So one of the things that we do is we'll play around with pricing a lot. So we'll do, if they come to us with a book that's $5.99 or whatever, we'll say, okay, let's bring it down to $2.99 for a day. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to change its pricing forever, but you want to play with it and just kind of see where your audience sweet spot is, because I threw out the number $2.99, but that may not be the case for you. It may be higher. It may be lower.
Right. Well, weren't you
really
saying that Mark Coker advises $3.99 on Smashwords?
He does. He advises $3.99 on his site, yeah. Yeah. So, and I think it varies. Again, I think it varies from. And he did say that he's coming out with a new report. So I'm curious to see what his numbers are now, or whether they've stayed the same or whether they've changed.
Yeah.
But it always sort of fluctuates around that lower end number. And this is part of the reason why you want to own the shelf, because the more books that you have, the less painful it is to drop the prices of these books, right?
Right.
You can also promote your ebooks on ebook-specific sites. So sites that are dedicated to ebook promotion. If you have a book it doesn't necessarily even have to be free. If you have a book that's 99 cents or $1.99, you can promote it on sites like Book Gorilla, and we've talked about BookBub before, and some others that are out there. Most bloggers, I will say, do like to have a printed book. So if you're just dealing with an ebook, you're going to need to make friends with your local printer and see what kind of a price that you can get from them to get actual copies printed, because most of the bloggers that we work with, they don't really care if it's just an ebook, but they want to have a printed version to hold in their hand. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah.
You can, even if you have an ebook only, you can still do a Goodreads giveaway, even though Goodreads giveaways typically are print books only. Again, I get them printed out just like they're a galley or an advanced copy of a book, and we'll do promotions that way. With the exception of the pricing and the ebook promotion-only sites and the free ebook days and things like that, promotions for ebooks and print are pretty similar. There are some pretty similar markets for them.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And let's talk about bundled books, which I think you're a big fan of.
I love bundled books. I think it is, the title that I mentioned to you, the one that went from 20 reviews to 196. So there are two books. Book 1 and Book 2 is out on this title, and they did pretty well. unknown, self-published authors. They did pretty well. But then when we bundled the bundle book has done extremely well. So bundle books tend to be, I think that the reader sort of looks at that and they think, oh my gosh, I'm getting such a deal. I'm getting 2 books for 1, or I'm getting, in some cases 20 books in one, and so they feel like they're getting a deal. But bundle books are really, really popular. So one of the things that I recommend is if you have, most of us are sitting on a lot of content. So if you have older books that are out there and you're thinking, gosh, you know what, they're still topical, they're still relevant, you can always take those. If they're not in ebook, which many of the older books may not be, you can put them into ebook, put them up on Amazon, and then at some point, bundle them. So you can have a lot of fun with bundling, and you don't necessarily just have to bundle your own books. If you know a few other authors with a similar topic, you can bundle those, you can bundle those as well. It's very simple, and just take you through the process of bundling. So one of the things that we do is we'll have our ebook, and it doesn't work for us, but just somebody that I use for book interiors. Our ebook person put 2 or 3 books together into one single file, and we'll get a new cover created for it. So you don't want to ever reuse the same cover. That just gets confusing. And upload it to Amazon, and that's all you do. So it's a bundle for ebook only. But again, every time when you put an ebook together like that, when you put a bundle together, it's a new book. So you can use and reuse a lot of your content. And we've had authors who just are sitting on so much stuff. Even, like we're talking about the shorter books. If you have a collection of, let's say, 7 or 8 shorter books, you can now put them together in a number of different bundle sets. So they're very, very popular. They started to be really popular in specifically in fiction, but now it seems that the nonfiction people are catching on and doing this as well. So it's a great tool, and it doesn't, aside from getting the book put together and the new cover, it doesn't really, there's really not a lot of expense involved in that.
Right. Great. Well, Sandy, let's turn to you now, and maybe we can talk a little bit about, what is book publicity and how it differs from marketing, and where it intersects with marketing, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Sometimes when we speak with authors, they'll say, "Hi, can you help promote my book?" And we'll say, let's start the conversation, and they'll say, "Well, where will my ad be run, and which newspapers or which magazines?" Which takes us a step back, and it's a really good question. Marketing your book can go from many different ways, including, as Penny talked about, social media, advertising, book trailers and websites, all kinds of different ways to market your book, print ads, etc. What book promotion is working with an author, their topic, their expertise in their book, to make them part of the news. And the big difference is you cannot pay, well, you're not supposed to be able to pay not for a time on the Today Show, or an article in the New York Times, or a feature story in AARP magazine, for example. You can't pay for those opportunities. It's up to the producer or the editor or the reporter, the blogger, to think that the author and his or her book are newsworthy, which makes it part of the news and actually brings up the credibility. So if you think about it, if you are looking at the New York Times, the magazine section, and you see an ad for a new book, or you see an article about a new book, which one is more likely going to entice someone to want to learn more about it or potentially buy your book? So the readers are looking kind of to the media to vet this author, to separate them from the thousands of others that are promoting their books at the same time. So publicity is making the author part of the news, whether it's through a magazine, newspaper, television, radio, online, and even blog outlets. It's making the author and the book part of the news.
Great. So this slide actually kind of addresses that directly, the difference between advertising and publicity. And I would agree with you that when faced with an ad versus an article, I'm much more likely to trust the article for obvious reasons.
Because someone has vetted it, exactly. Where advertising does work is if you are going to do advertising, especially for a well-known author that's coming out with the next James Patterson, the next Diana Gabaldon book, the next, someone who's already, a household name within their space, then advertising might make sense. But for a brand new author coming out, being interviewed or having their book featured in some way is definitely going to give that credibility. That advertising is paid and controllable, as you have the billboard there. You have control, you know exactly when. Publicity is not controllable. It's up to the media who, when, where, and how they're going to cover the author. So it can be extraordinarily frustrating. I'm sure Penny feels the same way when you watch the Today Show. You're like, I cannot believe they have that author on, all the good people that they could potentially be interviewing. This is what they've chosen. This is who they've chosen. So sometimes it can be extraordinarily frustrating because it is in someone else's control. But when it happens, it really is priceless when you get that exposure for the author, because then it can really open up doors, not just to book sales, but to other opportunities, depending on the author's goals. If it's a nonfiction book, they might be wanting to attract new business opportunities. They might want to attract the attention of a different publisher. There's just many reasons why people might want that media exposure. But that's the difference between advertising and publicity. Advertising is controlled and it's paid. Publicity is not controllable, but it's much more credible.
Let's talk about media placements then. We've got a sort of laundry list here of different types. Maybe we can talk about what seems to be effective for what types of books.
Sure. As we talked about earlier, book reviews are always welcomed. Are they, especially for fiction? If you are going to do some advertising to touch back on that, lead with a great book review, especially from a well-known book review source. That will make that, say, advertisement pop a little bit more than just a pretty picture of the cover. Book reviews are fantastic, especially, as Penny mentioned, we can get people posting the reviews on the Amazon page, the Goodreads page. Repurposing is great. So book reviews are fantastic, especially for fiction books. For nonfiction books, I would rather see feature stories and bylined articles. These just are able to showcase the author's expertise, their point of view, just why they're different, why someone should sit up and listen to what they have to say. So a bylined article is one of our favorite ways to promote an author, and we can do them with both fiction and nonfiction. Typically, nonfiction is a little easier because of the content. So a nonfiction author, a bylined article is typically between 600 and 1,000 words, and it has to be all about content. You cannot say my book is great. It's all about, a how-to, a 5-step to biggest mistakes, or a case study. Here's a problem, here's my solution, and here's the end positive result. Really showcasing the author's expertise. And one of our great ones was a self-published author who had a bylined article in Time Magazine, international issue, and it was about how to giving business advice. So there are definitely great ways for authors of every nonfiction authors of every avenue and where they are to showcase why what they have to say is unique. That's all about content. So bylined articles are fantastic for nonfiction authors, and we have used them for fiction authors as well. One example we had in the Washington Post is a bylined article or an op-ed piece, and the book was about the Magi and the whole history and the kind of the folklore versus fact, and it was a beautiful historical piece that had to do with his book. So that was a great tie. So for a fiction author for bylined articles, what we try to do is find some newsworthy topics within the book and turn them into speaking points and topics. Because if an author has written a book, whether it's fiction or even nonfiction, they've typically done some research on the topic and they can become an expert. So even a romance writer can do a bylined article around Valentine's Day for the top 10 romantic spots in your town or your county. And again, gives that, the book and the author just a little more visibility in kind of a factual way. So there's all kinds of ways to get media placements for authors. Interviews are pretty straightforward, whether they're print or radio or television. Feature stories with a bigger picture where the author is often quoted for expert commentary. And op-ed byline articles are ones that are pitched out typically to print and online outlets.
Great, great. So you were talking about byline articles. These are articles written by the author, the book author, about whatever they know about, basically.
Exactly. And sometimes, as I'm sure Penny knows, sometimes we help them along, sometimes more than others, depending on where they are in their stage of writing. It's amazing. Some authors we work with don't like to write because you experience that too, that they really are using their book as a tool to get their point across, and they don't want to spend their day writing. So sometimes we do help write the articles, but that's one of the fun parts of the job is brainstorming ideas and topics that will resonate with the media. So what we typically do is we have we'll have the author write an article, and we'll work with them on how to chunk their book, because if we present a whole book to a magazine editor, their eyes are going to glaze over because there's so much content. So what we have to do is be very, very laser focused. Okay, there's a gentleman I just spoke with this morning who has a book on travel safety with families and business professionals in kind of dangerous areas. So we were kind of brainstorming this morning on ideas, and it's like, okay, traveling with your family during a medical crisis abroad. So we have to just take one chapter and one part of the book and address that, because if we gave it to the whole audience, the whole book, they're not going to pay attention. So that's how we work with bylined articles. So we can send them out to exclusives where only this publication has access to this article, and then that's wonderful. And other times we put it out there to a broader audience and it gets picked up by dozens or hopefully hundreds of different outlets, or it gets syndicated, and that's fantastic for SEO purposes and whatnot. And then other times when an author especially has a very niche publication, as Penny mentioned earlier, I wrote a book just for HR professionals. Then what we typically do is go to the HR trade publications, give them a sample of the writing, and then offer, okay, here's 5 different topics this author can write about that will really resonate with your audience. And then hopefully they'll pick one, or they'll brainstorm back and forth, or they'll say, oh, we have this topic, or we'll research the editorial calendars and say this might be a nice fit for you, or, coming up in 5 to 6 months, this might be a good fit for an article. So there's all different kinds of ways that byline articles can really help, create that awareness for authors.
Great. So let's talk about the don'ts. The mistakes that authors who are new to this process tend to make, and they do sort of fall into distinct buckets, don't they?
They certainly do, and I'm sure that as you and Penny can attest to, that there are some learning curves, especially with authors. Many of them are fantastic in their field, but just new to talking about their writing. So some of the things that authors, one of the biggest things that we see the authors that mistakes is saying no to smaller market media. We have seen time and time again that small doors open up to big doors, and I can give you, hundreds of examples. But one is a fiction author, a memoir author who got a nice article, and it was the Orange County newspaper. That was read by someone who worked at People magazine, who then turned that into a 4-page spread about her. And that does happen. And she was a self-published author, memoir, and she had a wonderful platform. And those types of things, this author is busy. She's working full time. She has her foundation going. She's got all kinds of things going. And because she took the time out to do a much smaller market than she was hoping for, that just opened the door, and then that ended up to a stint on the Paul Harvey show. So it's just, Steve Harvey. So it just, you never know when those opportunities are going to strike. So working with especially a new brand, or even an existing author brand, if you are investing, your time in a publicist, or you're investing your, you really want to get your name out there, try to say yes for everything. We know you can't, but don't think that any opportunity is too small. And again, I could give you hundreds of examples of someone, another one did a late night radio interview, and this guy's expertise was helping people who had enormous tax bills and interacting with the government and trying to negotiate And he did a late-night radio show, and he got a client that was over $500,000 in just that one radio interview. Is that exceptional? Yes, but it does happen. So, so one big mistake authors do is they, just want the big names. And while we all want the big names, you got to start. I say, you're starting out in Little League. You can't start out in the World Series. You got to, pay your dues, get your feet wet, make your mistakes in the smaller market, and then it really gives us a chance to build your portfolio and open up the doors to the larger opportunities. So that's one thing we'd love to see happen, is to say yes. Another thing, and I'm sure Penny sees this too, before you start promoting your book, have all your ducks in a row. Don't say, I'm going to update my website someday. If you're going to invest in trying to get people to read your blog or follow you on social media or visit your website, sign up for the newsletter, you want to make sure that that is all set before we start inviting people to these platforms. The same thing with your Amazon page. We want to make sure that that is as robust as possible. As you mentioned, with the metadata tags set, a beautiful, author photo and bio, really healthy book description, and invite people that whether it's your brother, your sister, your mailman, to put reviews out there, so that when we go to the page, it doesn't look like it's under construction. So that's something else that we really want authors to do, is to put their best foot forward, because you might not have much time to capture people's attention. If they're not interested, you've lost that opportunity.
Great, thank you. So what about fiction? As we've discussed, if it's genre fiction, it's generally easier to market because there are distinct audiences for certain genres. But what else do you find with fiction that's different from publicizing nonfiction?
Sure. As Penny mentioned, and as you, Laura, have mentioned, fiction can be more challenging to promote if you don't have that real natural media hook to go along with it. So what we try to do is to dive a little deeper into the author's background and see if there's something in there that will interest readers outside of the straight book. Again, this is trying to get media attention. So, for example, we worked with a book about a woman, it's a fiction book about a woman who chose not to have children, a professional woman who was married, and the book was about her decision to be childless. So the book itself was great, it was strong, but what we were able to do is talk about that issue, about the social, the family, the biological clock ticking. And we had her on TV stations up and down the East Coast. She was actually based in London as well. We had a lot of London PR for her. So we were able to kind of go to the theme of the book and her own, because she herself had that same decision. So we were able to take that and transform it into ways to make the fiction book more newsworthy. Something that we also do when that's not available is we go to we use services like NetGalley and Edelweiss to put books out there so that it's available to librarians and book bloggers and reviewers and educators. So we're getting, again, for that niche when possible, or just a general book reader, trying to get that attention for the authors so that they get good reviews, that word-of-mouth buzz starting for their books. But for fiction authors in general, it can be more challenging, but we try to dig deeper into the author's passion, their background. Their local market is fantastic. Book signings are fantastic for them. We encourage them, as Penny said, to get on Goodreads, to interact, to have book giveaways. Go to your local library. Try to get your book on the bookstore shelves, and in talking to librarians, the best thing they can do is, once your book is on the bookstore shelves, is then go have a bunch of people that go request it and make a backup list so that there's a waiting list. And then other people say, oh, why is there 20 people on this list to get this book? It must be good. Let me put my name on it as well. So there are all kinds of ways like that fiction authors can try to break through the clutter.
Cool. Very cool. And what about nonfiction?
Nonfiction, typically, as Penny alluded to, usually a publicist's dream, because if they have the expertise to write the book, then there's often much we can do with them to promote their book, to promote their brand, and we call it personality cultivation campaign, especially when it's not as much about book sales, but about opening opportunities. Most authors we work with, it's the nonfiction authors, about 50-50. Like, yeah, book sales would be nice, but I really want to, you know, improve my speaking platform opportunities. Or I really want to drive new business to my website. I want to become the expert on fill in the blank for their topic. And so we talk to them about what media makes sense for them, because sometimes like one of our authors, he gave us one of our best testimonials, saying my investment was worth it. Just in 4 months with the Publicity, I had over $500,000 in new business. And
wow.
we had him in, you know, some great publications like Fast Company and Wall Street Journal, but that wasn't what sold the books, and that's not what gets him the new consulting projects. It was to get him on the cover of a very small, very niche business trade sales publication. And that's what opened the door to all kinds of opportunities for him. So a lot of it with the nonfiction authors is really listening to the authors, finding out what is meaningful to them. You might not have known about that specific trade publication, but that's our job too, is to make suggestions. But the authors come to us usually with a very broad knowledge of their industry. So it's a collaborative effort to make sure that we are spending our time wisely and making sure that we're pitching and reaching out to meaningful contacts, because people say to us all the time, how do you measure success? And we talk about quality versus quantity. And a lot of times in the nonfiction world, it's really more about the quality. We want to get in front of the target audience that makes sense. One author we're working with said, I do not want any local media. It makes zero sense for me to have local media. And that's good to know, because local media is often natural. And other authors say, you know what, my business is local. I only want local media. So again, it's really listening to what makes sense. And as Penny probably knows, we become like business consultants. And we talk about their business plans and where their brand is now, what they want to be. So that's really, honestly, some of the fun parts of this job, is to help transport, especially the nonfiction authors, and to getting them more and more opportunities so that their business grows and they stay with us for a long time, because they're able to take the media exposure and monetize that in some way.
Excellent. Excellent. So what about this next slide is mostly having to do with the problem of getting, you know, people's attention, and, you know, the fact that they can't see you coming. And there's so much out there already. It's almost like when I was in consulting, we talked about, you know, pain points and how the customer had to be in very, very deep pain before they actually called someone to do anything about it. So I suspect it's somewhat similar.
Exactly, and they, you know, no one cares about your book until they do. Exactly. You know, writing a book today is not newsworthy. No one cares that you wrote a book.
Right.
What you have to do is give them content, give them something that's going to, as you said, solve a problem, relieve a pain, and then you become valuable to them, and that's what authors really need to know. And no one wants to interview a book. They want to talk to someone who's a problem solver, who has something entertaining to say, and especially for fiction, or something thoughtful, something you know, for fiction, like, you know, touches you emotionally, or has, as Penny mentioned, those, you know, those topics that are touch points to you. But for nonfiction, you really have to solve the problem. You really have to get someone excited. And with business books, the number one reason people buy business books is to either increase their personal growth, income growth, or their company's growth. So as authors are planning to write a book, and, you know, fortunately sometimes I get to talk to people in the very early stages of writing, and it just is, you know, a really fun and collaborative process. You have to think about your target audience and how you can make their lives better, especially for nonfiction. And that is, you know, key, because again, no one cares that you wrote a book. They care that you can help them.
Right, absolutely right. So when you are sent on your first media interview, what are some things that authors can do to, to really expand the value of what they're putting out there?
During an interview, make sure that first you research the venue as much as possible. Is this going to be a friendly? Is this going to be a combative interview? And be prepared for it. So there's all kinds of media training interview skills. Have a glass of water, stand up when you talk, use a landline phone, all those kind of basic things. What makes it more interesting for an author's perspective is you're just praying that you have a good interview and that they're going to pitch your book. And you have to have a backup plan if they don't mention your book. And you can't say, as I say in my book, every 10 minutes. But you have to be prepared to mention your website and your book if the host is not going to be helpful. 99% of the time, they're professional. They know why you're here. It's a good relationship that's symbiotic. They're going to promote your book. If they don't or you get cut, you have to be prepared for that. But once you have an interview, as I'm sure Penny really can talk to, is how do you repurpose this, especially through social media. And you can take your interview straight consumer level and pitch it out there, whether it's through your Twitter or Google+, talk about it on your blog, talk about the experience, put the link out there, thank the host, mention, thank the outlet. And that is really a fun way to, reconnect with them, show them your value because they like it because their name's getting out there again. So you want to make sure that you are talking about it, the interview before and during and after. Make your interview links live on the links on your blog, on your website, so that a 20-minute interview 3 months ago is still valuable to new people coming in. It's not, that 20 minutes is gone in your life. Reuse it again. And if you're working with a publicist, take those interviews and we can use them to showcase how witty you are, how, to the point you are, to showcase your expertise, your interview style. That opens up doors to bigger markets. Because if we pitch Good Morning America to today's show, The View, the first thing they say back is, if they're interested, is do you have a clip of the author? So having those interviews to showcase the bigger opportunities is certainly a valuable way for an author to make the most out of their interviews.
Great, great, great. Well, I think we've reached the point now where I need to turn this back over to Adam for question and answer moderation. Adam?
Well, thank you very much, Laura, Penny, and Sandy. This has definitely been very informative. We do have several questions that have come in. So the first one is, what are the price points of short works between 10,000 to 20,000 words?
Penny, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I didn't want to. I wasn't sure who you wanted to take it. Yeah, I think that 10,000, 20,000 words really needs to be under $2.99. I mean, unless you are sharing the secrets of the universe, you really have to price it according to, I mean, you don't want your reader to be disappointed, and you're not going to sell a lot because Amazon will, on the Amazon page it says, oh, this book is 50 pages or this book is 70 pages or whatever. Also, don't go under 50 pages, speaking of page count, because I think anything under 50 pages is a blog post. I mean, not really, but, it starts to get, think about maybe combining that. But I think 99 cents, $1.99, $2.99 at the very most is probably where you want to price these books.
Terrific. Thank you, Penny. Adam, do we have more?
Yes, we do. The next question is there a better season for introducing, is there a better season for introducing a book marketing campaign?
This is Sandy. We say there's really no bad time to launch a book except for probably December. But there's a, depending on the theme of your book too, if it's a breast cancer theme novel. It's nice to have that to talk about during October, for example, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. If it's a baseball theme book, it's great to have it as baseball season launches in the spring. So there are certainly some times that are better than others depending on the topic of your book. Research Awareness Month and themes. If it's a great holiday book, a nice Santa book, you really want to start pitching it in the summer. You don't want to wait until December 1st to get it out there. So there's certainly some times. The September and January are typically, from our perspective, the most flooded times to promote a book, but also people have the mentality, they're kind of back at work from perhaps summer breaks and holiday breaks, and we get great response then. But also the summer can offer some nice opportunities to really market a book because there's less competition. So there's I would say I wouldn't start a launch of a book in December unless it's perhaps even a strong New Year's tie-in, and we might want to start in September to do that for long lead publications. But there really is not necessarily a bad time to promote a book, but really look at if it's a nonfiction book, is there a convention, is there when new rules come out or regulations or a big industry meeting or you're speaking, you definitely want to tie your book into that. And if it's a novel and there's some seasonal themes, take advantage of those as best you can.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, we're a digital-only publishing house. So when should we start our marketing prior to the actual availability of the book online?
Penny, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, I think that, so digital only. The same rules do apply for digital and print. It would really depend, my only hesitation is it would really depend on the types of books that they're offering. So I think that you want to be considerate of the same timelines depending on whether or not you do want to pitch some of the long lead bloggers. If you're looking for, any kind of media with those ebooks, as Sandy was talking about, you're still going to need to be aware of lead times. I mean, if they can elaborate more on the types of the markets of the books, that would probably help me a little bit. Now, if they have a lot of them, like if they're thinking about releasing, 10 or so in the next few months, I would probably cycle through them. I would probably do, one and then maybe another one a month later and that kind of thing, and just kind of keep the system active with their titles.
Great.
Great. Thank you. And earlier you had mentioned that longer works, full-length novels upwards of 70,000 words sell better. The person asking the question would like to know what was the basis of that statement.
Was that for me? I'm sorry, this is Penny. Was that for me? Because I actually...
Yeah.
Sure.
That sounds like it came in around that time, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, short is the new long. So 70,000 words is not necessarily a number that I would throw out because I think that between 70,000 and 100,000 tends to become the average size, quote unquote average size novel. What some studies have shown, what I have talked to genre fiction authors about, and what I've had a couple of publishers tell me, is that their sweet spot is at 20,000 words. So this is coming directly from both the authors, the publishers, and some of the readers that are talking about that the short books are, they're a quick solution to solve a very specific problem, or they're a quick read if you're talking about fiction.
Okay, thank you. The next two questions it's a two-parter. The first is how are independent graphic novels doing, and the second would be is how are independent ebook comic books are doing. And Penny, I think these were directed towards you.
We don't work with a ton of graphic novels per se, but I do know that they are doing. I mean, I don't know how well graphic novels and ebooks too, actually. I would maybe defer to Laura or Sandy on that one, but I do know that graphic novels generally are pretty popular right now. Ladies, do you know about what the statistics are as far as where people are reading these?
This is Sandy. We've worked with a few graphic novels. One was did very, very well, but it was, I think, because of the topic of it. And you know, I believe like the New York Times had a whole section on just graphic novels, and it seemed to be such a great trend, but it seems to be that print was a bit more of a favorite. I don't have any hard and fast statistics, but I think it's more of a collector's and a sharing type of experience.
Yeah, I don't have any hard figures right now. I can do some queries of the database, and then Adam, I can send you the information, and you can post it on the page with the where the webinar is going to be archived.
Okay, yeah, that will be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. The next question is, and I'm going to read this word for word, is doing promos is easy if I control the site, but it's difficult on Amazon and the like. So how can I make book bundling work for me?
Well, I think this is Penny. I think that this goes back to my statement on the call, is that you can't release a book into the world, even if you're not doing a free promo, without something that leads back to you. Because we all know that Amazon's pretty stingy about releasing any kind of data about who bought your book, and that's annoying. But you can control that. Now, it's not going to be 100% fixed for the lack of who bought your book, but certainly if you incentivize people enough to come back to you and your website. So for example, if you have a nonfiction book, you may want to put in a special offer there. If you have a fiction book, the letter that I mentioned in the back of the book, and if anybody wants to see it, we have a copy of it up on our website. They can certainly email me and I'll send you the link. But you know, the letter incentivizing readers to come and, you know, tell us what you thought about the book is always very helpful. Linking all of your books to all your other books. I'm amazed at how many times books are released without this very simple tool, because if you like, it's much easier to sell somebody something that they're already interested in. So if they bought your book and they like it, they're like, oh, I want to see what else Sandy's written, and they're going to go off and they're going to be buying all of the rest, you know, the rest of her books. So you really want you need to turn your book into a tool, a promotional tool, not just have the book out there and hope for the best, because hope is not a marketing plan.
That's a slogan. You're in the right business.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to use that new slogan to my manager. The next question is, how do you effectively pitch your book to advertisers like BookBub?
I'm sorry, to say the question again?
Sure. How do you effectively pitch your book to advertisers like BookBub?
Oh, so how do you necessarily compete with BookBub, essentially? In other words,
how do you get your book listed on BookBub?
I would say both, unless, and if the person who asked that question is still on the line, if you could resend that question, that would be great, but I will start with both.
Well, so the first one is, if you want to get listed in BookBub, now they don't take every single book that they are submitted to, and we're actually testing a new service on BookGorilla with a couple of titles that we have, which is, I guess, a BookBub sort of competitor. BookBub has a huge mailing list, and everybody's trying to get in there, but again, they don't approve every single book that they get. So you can go to BookBub and you can submit the book. They'll tell you whether or not it's been approved before you pay them the money to promote it. Now, you can promote your ebook on your own. So you can go to, there's a lot of free ebook sites that you can list your book on, and I don't know all of them like off the top of my head, but I can pull some up and maybe share them at the end of the call, or I can send you the information afterwards, Laura. Ignite Your Book certainly is one of them. You can list your book up there for free, and there's a whole bunch other, and there may be some links even on that site to find some other places. And basically what you do is you pick the dates of the free ebook promotion, and you go into these sites and you list the books there, and they'll let you promote it on their site for free. Now, a lot of those have fallen away because about a year ago, I guess it was, Amazon said, look, we know that you're not allowed to make affiliate sales if you list your book on the site, and people end up buying that same book. Right, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that was a lot of the big reason why many of these free sites were free, because they were making money on the affiliate sales. Totally get that. I totally understand. A lot of these sites have now gone away. What you also want to do is you want to make sure, and you want to tweet out the freebie, and you want to use hashtags. You want to use things like free, hashtag free ebook. You want to, and there's a huge list that's actually in the back of one of my books that has, so Kindle Reader Today, these are all Twitter accounts. So you can just tweet out your freebie and make sure, and, @ symbol, mention it to those various accounts, Kindle Reader Today, things like that, as well as using the hashtag. So you can do your own promotion of that. You can do ads on Facebook, but that's going to start to get pricey if you want to promote the freebie. I would not necessarily recommend doing ads on Goodreads, because ads on Goodreads tend to be isolated to anything that you're doing on Goodreads to promote your book. But you can do a lot on your own if you want to. It just takes a little bit of an engine to kind of get this, get this going, and staying on Twitter, and just making sure that these people who like freebies are are notified that you've got this book out for a few days.
Okay. Thank you. And the follow-up to this two-part, the person just got back to me, is BookBub. They are extremely choosy about their books. It seems that first-time author has a hard time getting on with them. Is there anything that they tend to like or dislike?
Well, BookBub, and I know Sandy, Sandy uses them as well, but BookBub tends to look for books that have, and I understand this, because if I were BookBub, I'd do the same thing. They want to have books that are getting, I think they say, at least, a 4-point rating on Amazon, so that they already have some reviews. And, you really, I got to tell you guys, I know it's really tempting when your book comes out and it's all fresh and shiny and new. It's really tempting to do a free ebook, but people typically don't buy books that are naked. In other words, books that just have a book up on the Amazon page and nothing else. Because even though we can have a ton of digital content on our e-readers, I'm sure that you all know we start to get really reluctant, like, oh gosh, do I really want to download it because it's just taking up space and I have to figure out if it's good or not. But if it has reviews, people like what other people like. And I think BookBub tends to look at that too. And also popularity of the genre. Sandy, isn't that your experience?
Absolutely. We've had authors that have been on BookBub, and others have said, why, a little offended. They didn't like my book. They're looking for books that already have a bit of attraction to them, a fan base started, because, they have the luxury to be a bit choosy. So that's what Penny said is exactly right. Try to get as many positive book reviews out there as possible. That's going to make it better for them. Perhaps share that you already have, X amount of followers and fans. That can elevate you as well. But as Penny said, if it's naked and there's not much to hook people in, BookBub's going to shy away because they have, 30 other authors who might have a better profile.
Excellent. And this is the last question that's come in, and it is, how do you deal with marketing a book that does not fall clearly into a defined genre? For example, a book that falls into both thriller and sci-fi.
With the Digital Book World Conference that I went to, that was a big topic, and it's actually can be a good thing for an author, and that is, changing up those tags and categories. And that's what the science fiction author he said he made something like $75,000 a month in book sales. He was like the poster child for success. And he said one of the things that he did is his book had some paranormal. So he would have that as a tag for 2 weeks, and then he'd change it up, and it would be historical. And he'd change that up, and he would put it under sci-fi, because so many books today do have a broader category. Take advantage of it, because then it's going to, when you change those tags, it's going to get you in front of new audiences. So that's, what we recommend to authors is to embrace that, and it depends who we're pitching to. If we're pitching to the thriller audience, we're going to push that it's thriller. If we're pushing it to the historical, we're going to highlight that it's a historical book. It's all about who you're talking to in the audience. But oftentimes, and this gentleman was a phenomenal success story in that take advantage of it, because you have a much bigger potential target audience for your book.
Yeah, on the other hand, you don't want to mislead the audience. So just, from a metadata perspective, I think it's important to emphasize that all of the categories that you're switching up need to actually reflect some aspects of the book.
Yeah, you have to be honest. It
Right.
truly is a multi-genre book that can be as good. But no, you don't want to deceive people, and it has, one sentence about a ghost, and they can't call it a paranormal book.
No.
So you want to be authentic about that. But there are some books that do cross, especially in the romance. Sometimes it can be military, historical, cowboy. You can kind of mix all those in, but you're absolutely right, Laura. You want to be authentic in how you're representing your book.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been definitely a great webinar, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending. This is going to conclude today's broadcast, and you'll be able to access the recorded version of this webinar in the archives section of DC Lab, which is at www.dclab.com.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, you too.